This is the MBA Wire, episode 27. My motto, life motto would be, no one said it'll be easy. No one ever said it'll be easy. So embrace the challenges and do your best, Join the club. Everyone has difficulties. Let's accept that and push on. Move forward. Don't ever stop.
Inspirational MBA talk with successful alumni to motivate you during your application run. We go behind the scenes of every story, talk business, and show you why it's worthwhile to never give up on your MBA dream. And now, here's your host with the most, Mateo Chang.
What's up, citizens of the MBA Wire? Welcome back to another episode. Today I have AJ Warner, founder and chief consultant of Touchdown Education Consulting out of Beijing. Now, AJ, this is my first time doing an interview with somebody from China. This is pretty cool. And just a little backstory before I let AJ introduce himself. AJ and I were just at the 2015 AGEC conference in beautiful France and London. And we actually did a little bit of karaoke singing, so that was pretty cool. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. AJ, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners?
Well, as you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from China, but I've been here now 10 years. So I was originally born and raised in Los Angeles, and I lived in Chicago and in Texas, and I actually graduated from the University of Texas with my MBA. Whoa. And I got married shortly after my graduation from Texas, and my wife, who I met in business school, was originally from China. So after 4 years of marriage, one day she told me she wanted to move back to China. And I had been working at Deloitte Consulting that whole time. So as a management consultant, you travel a lot. And I was sort of burning out on the constant travel. And the opportunity to go to China was very exciting. So I took advantage back in 2005 before the Olympics to come out here to China. And that's when I set up Touchdown, which is the education consulting firm that I'm the founder and chief consultant.
Nice Beijing. Yeah, that's when you said you were originally from LA and then came out of Texas. I was like, how did that happen? How did China happen? Out of nowhere. Because AJ is, you look at him, you would never say there's anything Asian about him. So, it's just like, how did that happen? Now that you've explained that your wife is from China, man, that's awesome. So how have you been liking it there? What's it like? And can you tell me a little bit about what the daily life is like in Beijing?
Well, I don't feel that different necessarily than working in America. I mean, it's a very business oriented place, Beijing, but things change very quick. It's a very fast paced environment, and it seems that every 2 years society is changing a lot. New things are coming. Things that were very common disappear. So it keeps it fresh. And I even my own clients, every 2 to 3 years, what their interests are, what their goals are, it changes. And it keeps me excited because I'm always learning, which to me is always important. As a person, I always want to learn. And China forces me to constantly learn.
Nice. Yeah. So you guys are always like, it's a very trending city, I guess, like even in big cities like New York or Los Angeles or Miami, there's always new trends coming out. And I guess that's the case for Beijing then.
Absolutely. There's not only is it trends from overseas that come to China, but it's a lot of just domestically created trends too. So there's just a lot of changes. And just driving around the city, it's just constant new buildings are coming in and new shopping malls, and you just feel like the things are just always on the change. So you can never relax. As a consultant, I have to always be thinking from my client's perspective. So I always have to stay up to date on all the changes that are happening here so that I can best consult to my clients.
Just staying ahead of the game there, huh? Keep you on your toes 24/7, huh?
Absolutely. I feel Beijing's minus one thing, and I think everyone knows the one thing that Beijing is unfortunately well known for, and that's air pollution. That's definitely true. Pollution here, everyone unfortunately recognizes a problem, and the government is trying its best to improve, but minus that, I think Beijing's a great place to live and to work.
Yeah, yeah, but well, all big cities have, like air pollution problems, I think. But is it really that bad in Beijing?
Yeah, it really is that bad. And sometimes you can't even see out the window. It's that bad.
Wow, wow, that's crazy.
But the last 2 weeks have been great. The last 2 weeks we've had blue skies. It's been really, I'll call it unusual weather for Beijing. But I'm loving it. So every evening I'm out with my kids. We're outside of our where we live and playing badminton and playing baseball and just enjoying the great weather.
Nice, very nice. That's good. You got to enjoy it while you can, and I think as long as everyone is making their own effort into helping out changing this whole pollution scenario, it's going to take time, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
they're making difficult steps, but they're making steps nevertheless to improve the air quality here.
Nice. All right. Well, now I'm very interested in hearing about like your students. I mean, you're a consultant in Beijing, so I have all these questions. I'm interviewing a lot of internationals, but I haven't had much of a perspective from like Chinese students. What's it like for them? First off, what are their difficulties throughout the application process?
I after 10 years of working with students, I've really narrowed it down that they have lots of experiences. China, there's the job opportunities are endless. There's a lot of things going on here. But because of cultural differences, they're not sure what to share about their backgrounds in the essays. And that's where I actually provide the most value to them is listening to their stories and helping them identify which stories that would be the most interesting for them to share in the essays.
Hmm.
A lot of times here in China, people like to look to role models. They look to someone who's been successful in applying to Harvard or Stanford or Wharton or wherever their target MBA program is, and they try to step by step to sort of copy what they've done, rather than looking into themselves and trying to find the unique things that they can offer in the application.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, because in Asian countries, reputation is big, but it gets to the point where they end up trying to do the same thing, which is actually a big no-no for schools that are looking for diversity. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they have the mistake of thinking if they follow what someone else has done to be successful, then that will make them successful. And you're absolutely right. They have to find the unique things that they can add to the MBA program that differentiate them from all the other Chinese applicants. And they have it. Everyone I work with, when you dig deep, they have amazing stories that will help them to stand out in the applications. But they don't know it's an amazing story, and they don't know how to share that story. And then we sit down, we talk, we review. I get them confident about those stories and get them to write about those stories in their essays.
Oh, nice. So, tell me one of the coolest stories of recent. No need for names, but just if there's any cool stories like that you thought really stood out.
Well, there was a recent applicant. He had actually done a PhD program at NYU, and it was interesting that when he was at NYU, he became very involved in the cycling club. And so he was organizing cycling trips throughout all 5 boroughs of New York. And so every weekend, he would be with 20, 30, 40 people all on their cycles or bicycles, all cycling throughout New York. And it was just a great story of how he contributed so much to his department and his school at NYU. And that actually became a great story that we shared in his application about how not only would he be a smart and talented student, but that he would contribute a lot back to the MBA program. And here was an example of how he made his PhD program great for all of his fellow PhD students.
That's pretty nice. Yeah, definitely. Anything you can aggregate and contribute back to the schools. I mean, that's a big big factor for an MBA application. Now, what about English? I mean, I'm from a Korean. I have a Korean background, but we Asians have a difficulty with speaking in English, especially as a second language. How is that for you there?
Well, I mean, since I focus on the top MBA programs, my clients come to me because they want to get into the Magic 7, or they're focused on, top 10 or whatever it is. They typically come with very strong English skills. I'm always impressed that someone who's actually never been to America can speak English so well. It makes me jealous because I wish I could speak Chinese that well, and unfortunately I can't. But hearing them speak English with such a perfect pronunciation and the vocabulary, and able to have great conversations with me, is just so impressive.
No, I didn't expect that at all either. That's pretty cool because, I mean, usually for internationals, I'd say their biggest difficulty throughout the application would be like the GMAT. But I'm guessing it's not that much of a big deal as for students coming out of China then, because Asians are pretty good with math and numbers already. It's a stereotype, yeah, I know, but most Asians, they're pretty good with math. And then if you get an Asian student who really applied himself and learned English without having ever stepped into any English speaking country, that's a pretty big hurdle that that's a head start that he gets on that application part, right?
Well, yeah, in China, I mean, people spend a lot of time on the tests. I mean, this is part of Chinese culture historically, is focusing on the test as a way to get ahead in society. So this goes way back, 1,500 years ago. It's very common to put a lot of effort into testing. And so when it comes to GMAT, I mean, people will spend a year preparing for their GMAT. They will go to classes. They will work every night after work on preparing for the GMAT. And they will take it multiple times until they are able to get a score that they're proud of. I had one client who took it 6 times, and eventually he got a 750.
Wow.
And he finally felt that was a good enough score he could stop. But he had put so much effort to get that score because he was committed. He had in his heart, he knew he had to get a high score, and he was going to do everything he could to get that score.
Yeah. It's funny, like with the work ethics. I think it really differs from country to country. I mean, because I'm not saying one's better or one's worse or something, but for example, sometimes I'm concerned about students, some students that I've had where, they have tried to mix social life in there with their application process and balancing it out with professional and family life. And it's just like, it's not possible. And, they're not happy with, maybe a 690. They wanted a 720, 730 to be able to, get into a top 3 school. But it's kind of like you have to sacrifice something in order to get what you want. And for example, for Asian students, I know very well that it's like, look, either you study or you die, basically, kind of mentality.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Sometimes I have clients that will quit their job and to prepare for the GMAT and to the TOEFL. I mean, so they'll quit their job 6 months before they plan to apply and just focus 10 to 12 hours a day on preparing for the tests. Now, I can't do that. I mean, after a half an hour, I have to take a break. I'm a typical American. Half an hour break, half an hour break, half an hour break. But I mean, some of my clients...
We call it multitasking.
There you go, multitasking. Some of my clients can sit down for 4 hours and not move and just focus on studying. And I'm in awe. It's really impressive that they can do that.
Wow, yeah, and there's no way I can do that either, and I'm Asian, so.
Well, you lived in America too long, so you're Americanized. That's the problem.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I like to multitask too.
Yeah,
it's the whole attention deficit thing, I think. Yeah, that's crazy though. I mean, and that's good then for you guys. I mean, as long as that's good for students. So what is then their difficulty other than figuring out what to write in their essays? If the GMAT is not going to be a problem, what other obstacles do they face?
I mean, it comes down to what they're going to share, and then the actual writing. So because they don't know what to share, they struggle with the writing. It becomes a very painful experience. It's not a happy experience. And so that's, what I'm doing is I'm helping them think about it and giving them a structure. And then once they have a structure to write, to use to write, then they can actually enjoy the writing process. They can actually, share their own thoughts. And then it comes out in a way that the admissions people can understand and appreciate what that applicant has done. That's going to make them an absolute asset to that MBA program.
Nice.
So go ahead.
No, because I was just thinking about that. How you just showed like kind of their human side. Where for them, it's also they enjoy the soul searching part of the application. Because the thing is, there's this whole, a lot of people look at Asians like, they're machines, and this somewhat they are, as when they're focused and concentrated on doing something, we do function as a machine somewhat, but the whole soul searching process is what I find to be the most exciting part of the application process anyway. So, and it sounds like to me that when they figure out what they need to talk about, that's when it gets really exciting for them. Is that right?
Yeah. We have what we call our first meeting. It's where we sit down with the client. They've filled out a questionnaire ahead of time. So I've made them already think about things prior to meeting with me. And then when we meet, we drill deep into what they've written about. So that acts as sort of the foundation. And then from there, I find new things to ask them about and drill into and to make them talk about. And sometimes it's really the first time they've ever talked about these things in front of other people. They never realized that it was relevant or it was interesting. Sometimes they're even embarrassed. They don't really want to talk about it. And
why embarrassed though?
Well, they may think it's a bad thing. They may not realize that this experience is actually really interesting and would be great to include. And then when I explain it to them and I show them how this could be a main part of their application, that's when they get excited. Because for the first time, they can finally see how things that they've done are going to make them stand out in the application itself.
Okay. I see. What is it for you then? Like, actually, another question came up in my mind just now. Every country has like a sort of the two preferred schools, or the two schools that almost everybody tries to get into, except for, let's say, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, or MIT. I'm sorry, Harvard, Stanford, or MIT, which are the top three schools, in consideration in Brazil, at least. There are schools in Brazil, for example, like Ross is a school that, man, so many students try to get into. Kellogg is another one. What are the schools in China that people are always, those common schools that everyone tries to get into?
I mean, of course, all the schools you've mentioned, anything that's ranked is on everyone's radar. But in China, I often get a lot of clients that are very focused on Wharton and on Fuqua, on Duke. Mm-hmm. These schools greatly attract Chinese students because those schools have strategically taken a lot of Chinese in the last 10 years. So if you look at those MBA programs, you're going to see that they've taken a lot of Chinese and thus have built up big alumni networks back in China. So today, people look at those schools as ideal schools to go to for a fantastic MBA education, as well as a strong alumni network back in China.
Wow, now we're talking product strategy here for businesses like business schools. That's pretty cool. That's a great way to put it. They've invested in a lot of the country students. The alumni then go back and then stimulate the new students because they build a brand in that country.
Mm-hmm, exactly. I mean, those two schools have definitely done that. Michigan has also been a school that has strategically taken a lot of Chinese over the last few years, and they do a great job of welcoming students. So there's certain MBA programs that really the alumni will reach out to the newly admitted students and really make them feel at home and really encourage them to actually go to those schools in the end. Because in the end, Chinese students will change. They may be accepted to a number of programs. They'll put deposits on all 3 programs. And then in the end, they finally make a decision. So, yield is always an issue.
What's that decision usually based on?
Well, it's a combination of rank, of scholarship, and also the alumni, how they feel about the alumni that they interact with here in China. So
Wow, that is everything.
They feel that the alumni are strong and are going to be really a great help to them throughout their careers. That may make them feel that maybe going to a slightly lesser ranked school may long-term be better, because the higher ranked school doesn't have quite as welcoming or as strong of alumni network.
Yeah, I think that's actually the future of MBA business school, the MBA business itself, or B schools. Their brand only strengthens with their alumni, I think, because it's like you said, man. You get those schools that really embrace new students, that really show how the alumni network is tight and very active and contributes to each other. And that's what really draws in the new generation of students. It's no longer, those a few schools, I'm not going to name them, but those schools that are like, yeah, we have a good brand name. So, if you guys want to get in, you're going to have to prove it to us that you deserve to get in because we're an elite school. Okay, great. I think that time has come and gone, because now you get these schools that are really thinking about the students and how the students are going to really, really take away that experience and help their future careers. And they're starting to come up in ranking, and that's pretty cool. At least for me as a student, I would be looking for a school that's going to embrace me as one of their own, and not going to be just another suit.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really important, because it's not just the brand when you go to school. It's the long term. How are people going to help you? I mean, Duke is an example. Years ago, Duke wasn't ranked number 1, but because of all the effort that Duke has done in building up its alumni and tweaking its curriculum, now it's ranked number 1 on Bloomberg Business Week.
Yeah. And
so the students that went there years ago are all very proud and even more motivated that their school has gone so high in the rankings. Yes.
And Duke has been doing an amazing job. Even in the World Cup here in Brazil last year, they had that, and unfortunately, they didn't even air much of it. But when they used the exoskeleton from, and the lead researcher for this exoskeleton, the first exoskeleton used that was controlled by the brain was actually from Duke. So that was an exposure that Duke had, but internationally, except Brazil didn't really air that as much as they should have. I think that was pretty cool. The first kickoff. Duke has been doing awesome. I think this is a great school. They have a great MBA program. I'm still a favorite of UNC, North Carolina, but I have to respect Duke's MBA program because they are doing very good, man. What about your students? So do you see a growing trend in like students seeking MBAs?
Well, prior to the financial crisis, the numbers were increasing every year up until 2008. And then from that point, we saw the numbers begin to drop off. People felt, there were less job opportunities in the United States. Maybe the education in the United States wasn't very good because of all the financial problems affecting the United States. And also there were a lot more opportunities in China. So people felt they didn't have to go abroad to be able to access, all these opportunities. But in the last 2 years, we're seeing applicants increase again. So people are feeling again that going abroad is going to give them the skills and knowledge and experience and alumni network that will have a big impact on their career. So we're seeing the numbers increase again.
Oh, yeah. But now the thing is, I think what's changed, there has been a shift in this career acceptance thing, where before it used to be mainly international students mainly did their MBAs looking for a career, in the United States or abroad. But now there's been a lot of companies like in Europe, in India and Africa that are starting to pick up internationals from MBA schools too.
Well, for most of the clients I work with, I mean, their goal is either after they graduate with their MBA, work a couple of years in the United States for a famous company, and then come back to China and leverage the MBA education and the work experience and the brand of the company that they worked at to get an even better job back in China.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they can get hired by a top firm in China, then come directly back to China. But that's only if they're able to get a job with a Goldman Sachs or a CIC, which is the sovereign fund here in China. But people still want to work in the United States for a couple of years. They still feel that education plus the hands-on work experience is invaluable because they have a long-term career. It's not just, they're still going to work for another 30 years. So another 2 years investment in the United States will yield bigger dividends throughout their career.
You're absolutely right. That is absolutely correct. Now, on the consulting side, like for you with, in the last 10 years, you've been helping students get into their schools of choice. Now, a couple of questions here. First off, what is it that you really enjoy about this job, man?
Well, I think it comes down to when I first started this type of work 15 years ago. I was actually in the Texas MBA program, and one of my Korean classmates came to me and said, AJ, you got a full scholarship to come to Texas. You're a great guy. I have some friends back in Seoul. Can you help them to get into MBA programs? And I said, sure, I can try. I mean, it was the first time anybody ever approached me for help. I had never done it before. But that first experience really grabbed me because I had grown up in LA with tons of Korean Americans, so I knew Korean American culture, but I never knew real Korean culture, which is very different. And working with these people, these business people, I learned so much about Korea and how Korean people think. It was interesting. I learned so much that I had never knew that I didn't know that I really wanted to continue it. And so even after I graduated from the MBA program, I continued to work with students part-time, even though I was working full-time at Deloitte Consulting, because I learned about culture. I learned about people's different values and way of addressing problems. And that's, even today, what I like the most about the work I do is that I get to meet people on a very personal level. I get to know their stories. And most importantly, I get to help them. I'm a kind of person who enjoys helping people. And so this kind of work is all about helping others. And so I learn, I help, I feel very satisfied. At the end, when people get into programs, they call me, they're excited, they say, AJ, thanks so much. That really motivates me to help the next person.
Wow, spoken like a true preacher, man. Amen to that, dude. I agree on every single word that you said there. It's so gratifying, listening to their stories, figuring things out, helping them through this process, this difficult process, and then seeing them finally get into the school of their choice. That final thank you handshake is just, wow. It makes up for that whole year of hard work.
It does. I mean, it's a struggle. I mean, because it's a team. We work as a team. We go through the same issues of being, not getting an interview from a school or getting rejected by a target school, and just hanging in there and not giving up. And then in the end, 99.9% of the time, clients finally get into a school that they're excited about and they want to go to. And then I also get to enjoy in that experience because I was there the whole way. I was part of that journey.
Oh yeah. It almost makes it feel like you were doing your own journey, kind of throughout that sharing moment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No, I didn't know that you knew like the Korean culture as well. I thought I had figured you knew more about the Chinese culture, and then I'm finding this out for the first time. So here's a personal question. Between the Korean culture that whether it's Korean LA or Korean Korea, because I grew up in LA, so I'm Korean. I'm Korean LA Korean, and not Korea Korean.
Korean LA style. There you go.
Yeah, yeah, LA K-boy. But what is the level of devotion to karaoke between the Chinese and the Koreans? We go back to the karaoke because it was so fun. How well do you have to sing karaoke in order to close a deal?
Well, honestly, I have no idea in terms of KTV or karaoke with the Korean culture, because I don't think I've gone, except for you. I don't think I've seen karaoke with any Korean Americans.
Yeah, you've never.
But in China, I do a lot of KTV. I go out with clients.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was just in Wuhan, which is a big city in China, and I went with all of our clients in Wuhan, and we went out and sang karaoke for a couple hours one night, just to, as a way to connect with people and have fun. And so people here in China, karaoke is all about just hanging out with your buddies. It's a big thing here in China.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and even in the Korean culture, karaoke is big, and we call it noraebang. But if you get a chance, then definitely go strut your stuff. But did you sing your Hotel California at Wuhan? Is Wuhan?
Yes, I did. That's one of the few songs I actually know the words, so it's part of my stable of songs.
It's in your repertoire.
It's my repertoire, yes.
Yeah. AJ sang a classic Eagles song, Hotel California, over back in Paris. And I tried not to sabotage a few of Maroon 5's songs, but it was all in good fun. We had a few beers, and you're right. It's a great moment to socialize, just hang out with some guys that you're really enjoying the night with, and just let it all out there. It's pretty cool.
Well, I got to be honest. You did an amazing job. I think in some ways you did better than them. I mean, you impressed everyone in the audience. They just stared at you, going, "Who is this guy? He's great."
Thanks.
When I was up there, everyone was staring in the other direction, like, "Who is this guy? Get him off the stage."
We heard some people clapping. I slipped you a few roofies in your drink. That's why you have this perception that I sang better than I did. But thank you. Thank you for having a good memory of what I've done up there.
Oh, I have a very positive memory. But one thing I want to throw in real quick, and one of the reasons why I like to sing Hotel California, which is an Eagles song, is because during my MBA internship, so I did my MBA internship at a high-tech firm in Seattle, and the investor relations person at that time was an older guy. He was very interesting. I used to always talk to him. And before he got into investor relations, earlier in his career, he actually worked for the record labels, and he would go out and find bands.
Oh,
that's what his job was. Wow. And he told me the story when he first joined one of the record labels, that his boss sent him out to one of the nightclubs in Los Angeles and said, "I want you to listen to this band and tell me if they're good or not." And so he went out, and he didn't think that band was very good, but he found another band that he thought was amazing. And so he came back to his boss and said, this other band is great. You got to listen to them. And his boss got really upset with him because he said, "I told you to go listen to this band, and you listened to the other band." And so this investor relations guy told me that he had to tell his boss that the other band that wasn't very good at all, they sucked, but this other band was awesome. And he dragged his boss out to listen to the band. And his boss was thoroughly impressed, and they signed him that next week. And that band was the Eagles.
Yes, the Eagles. I mean, I love the Eagles. I actually had a chance to listen to them play live. And look, very few bands are as good recorded in a studio as they are live. Very few bands. I can name a few, like the Beatles, the Eagles. I mean, yes, the older ones, but nowadays you got all this, equipment that you can help you auto-tune and stuff. But back then when rock and roll was really rock and roll and coming up, I mean, you really had to sound good on stage. and not just in the recording studio. And that's a very cool story. I mean, I didn't know that, you had mentioned that back in Paris, but it was so loud, it was hard to get the whole detail of the story. Now that I've understood, that is pretty cool, man.
And it was during my MBA internship. I went there in year 2000. So after the millennial parties, the Eagles actually sent a private jet to pick this guy up and fly him out to the Eagles party. And he was the honored guest at the Eagles 2000 year party.
Dude, that is so cool. That is so cool.
Really cool.
Did he take you?
Yeah, I met him after. I met him the summer of 2000. So he showed me pictures.
Oh.
He showed me some pictures, which were really cool. But it was just such an amazing thing to meet this guy and the connection with the Eagles. And it just forever made me like the Eagles that much more because I knew their story. I knew their backstory.
Oh, nice, man. All right. Well, I'm going to polish up some of my Eagles songs then. So the next time we meet and we go to a karaoke or a KTV, we'll do a duet.
Well, we'll be in Boston. If you're able to come up and I'm able to go out, there's the next IGAC conference is going to be at MIT and Harvard next year.
Yes. That I'm definitely going to. But do you even plan to come down to Brazil sometime before?
I'd love to come down to Brazil.
Yeah, we're going to have to find a good reason for you to come, right?
Yeah, find a good reason, and I'll definitely make it.
All right, we'll think of a compelling reason. Now, with your 10 years of experience of students in Beijing, how many students, more or less, do you think that have you helped get admitted into MBA schools? And then there's a follow-up question after that.
Okay. Well, I work with MBA and I work with business masters. And those are people applying for finance, accounting, marketing. They're typically pre-experienced, and the MBA are all, of course, post-experience. So for MBA in China, it's well over 200 people that I've worked personally with to get into MBA programs. And then for business masters, I calculated it, with myself and the team, we've worked with almost 1,500 students that we've helped through their process to stand out and get into top programs in the United States or the UK or Canada.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's a lot. Now, with all that extensive experience, what's your main advice to motivate students? Because this is a motivational podcast. I want to get students pumped. When it's coming up right around now when the downhill starts hitting them, and they start thinking. Students start thinking, "Am I really doing this? Should I really be doing this or not?" What are some of the motivational advice that you give these students to help them through that difficult phase when they're doubting themselves?
That's a good question. One thing I always focus on is finding those things that are truly unique about them and showing them why those uniquenesses will help them to stand out and be seen seen among all the other Chinese applicants. Because I'm working with a lot of Chinese, so the fear is that they're all very similar and sort of get lost among themselves, and helping them see what makes them special and why it's going to matter to the admissions people. That definitely gets them motivated. They feel that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that they're going to make it to whatever school that they're so focused on. And sometimes introducing them to previous clients that have been into those schools and giving them a chance to talk with previous clients gets them very motivated, because here's someone who has been through this journey and succeeded, and they get to talk to them and learn from them. And they can see that they too have similar backgrounds, and that they also have the opportunity to be able to get into a top program like that. And then the other thing is, for a lot of students, their interviewing skills in China are not very good in terms of a Western way of interviewing. So in terms of the Chinese way, fine. I mean, they're very effective. They're able to get their points across and be very powerful when the interview is in Chinese with a Chinese audience. But when they switch to English in a Western audience, often they don't know what to say. They don't know how to start the interview. They don't know what to share. And when I do interview practice with them and get them to feel comfortable, you can see a transformation. So by the second or third time, this person's getting excited because they feel like, hey, I can prove to the admissions people that I am the right candidate, and they get excited. So, those are some of the ways that I've seen my clients get motivated and change from being fearful to being courageous and excited about the whole process.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of interview coaching? Because I mean, that's one aspect that I love doing about, throughout the process is interviewing and preparing students for that interview. And I hadn't thought about it of how that would affect, going from the Asian style of an interview to a Western style of interview. That must be a huge change for your students there in China.
It is, because, when we first start, I mean, most of them are awful. I mean, there's probably better words to describe it, but they're awful. They are totally ineffective in the interview. And basically, we do a foundation interview practice where we go over a lot of stuff and get them to start just general questions. And then for each school, we do an interview practice. So that they're well prepared for the typical questions that school asks. And it builds on the previous interview practice. So they get stronger and stronger and stronger. So by the time they're interviewing with their second or third or fourth school, they're really confident in their interviewing skills.
Yeah. It takes, how many interview practices do you think it takes for your students usually?
At least 3 hours of interview practice before they start to feel confident in themselves.
Yeah, I think 3 hours is good. Yeah, I usually give like 1.5 each class. Each session is an hour and a half. So about 2 sessions is usually enough to really get them on track. It's about 3 hours. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And I like to share with them that the interview is the very last step of the application process. I mean, they've worked so hard on the tests, the GMAT, the TOEFL. They've worked hard on getting their resume down, getting their essays written, and all the right examples and stories, all clearly written in their essays. They've had to sit down with their recommenders and beg them to be the recommender, and then sort of coach the recommender to write the recommendation, which in China is really tough. So they've done all this hard work. They filled out the online application, which takes a lot of work. Some schools, it's a lot of work to fill out. So by the time we get to the interview, I mean, this is it. If they don't do well in the interview, all that hard work has been wasted. So I get them very motivated on working hard to improve their interview skills, because I know not only is it important for the MBA application, it's vital when they get to school to network, to get interviews for internships and eventually for full-time jobs. If they don't interview well, they're not going to get jobs in the United States. So it's all part of a process to help them to actually get their real goal, which is getting a great job after the MBA program.
True. That's true. It's actually a preparation. It's a foundational prep. You get through the MBA interview, you use the same type of approach and psychology in your career or professional interview later after your MBA, and it really gets them, you really set them up for success actually in the future. That's pretty cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. If you need anything, I'd be happy to collaborate you with on that, because that's one of my greatest passions of this whole MBA consulting business here. What I really love about doing this is really getting to dig deep into the questions and try to show the connections between their answers, and then showing them how there are certain things that they can say in one answer that kind of sets the stage for the other questions that will usually come up afterwards, so you kind of, there's a little psychology behind there. It's pretty interesting. I like it. I enjoy it.
I just before we have this interview, I was just doing interview practice with a client interviewing for Chicago. And that's exactly what I shared with her, that in the introduction questions, I told her, you don't tell them everything. You just give them a high-level overview and hint. It's an appetizer to make them want to ask more. And then you kind of control with the interviewer what questions they're going to ask, because you've given them interesting things, but not enough. They feel dissatisfied and they have to ask deeper questions. But these are questions about things that you're well prepared to answer. So, exactly. If you prepare the clients well, they can actually control the interview, not the interviewer.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're very much on the same page. I mean, this is pretty cool. This is interesting. This is gonna be an interesting conversation in our next conversations coming up when we talk about stuff like that. That's pretty cool, AJ. I didn't know that about you, man. I'm pretty stoked about that. So tell me then, as a consultant, like what would you tell students, then, how to prepare, what should they expect, and what kind of resources should they look for? I mean, what resources do you usually use as far as, online stuff?
Well, I mean, I'm always on their case to go to the actual MBA program's website and really go through it in detail. I mean, there's a lot of information that they can extract in terms of the faculty, the courses, the student clubs, the blogs that a lot of schools have a lot of great information. So they can really get a lot of key things to use in their application and their interviews just from the school's website. So that's the first thing I push them towards. In China, we have a website called Chase Dream, which is an aggregate of all the people applying for MBA and business masters. And there's a tremendous amount of sharing that goes on that website. I don't have to tell my clients, they all know that, but they will gain information from there that may or may not be right, and then they'll bring it back to me and we'll talk about it. But that's another very good resource because it's typically actual applicants that are sharing their own personal observations with the greater group.
It's kind of like the GMAT club.
Yeah, it's a GMAT club,
like
but it's for Chinese. It's from the Chinese students' perspective. Most of my clients do not go out to the GMAT club because, it's culturally different. The information is from a different perspective. It's not as relevant for Chinese applicants. So they don't typically use too many websites outside of what, the Chase Dream and then the actual school's website. They may go to Business Week to get the rankings. Business Week is viewed as more the actual true rankings. U.S. News and World Report is really not seen for MBA. It's more for colleges. So in China, people go to U.S. News and World Report for the undergraduate ranking, but not for the MBA ranking.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I did not know that. That's interesting to know. So any internationals here that are listening onto this podcast, if you are, living in China, or if you are Chinese and you want more resources, you can definitely check these websites out. But how can our listeners get in contact with you, AJ? I mean, in case they want to ask you questions or, possibly hire your interview coaching sessions. That would be awesome for when they do get called in for an interview interview for a school. How can listeners contact you?
Well, they can come to our website, which is touchdown.org.cn. And the reason we say touchdown is because I personally am a big American football fan. And in America, scoring a touchdown means success. It's hard work. It's a team effort. But when you score it, you're so excited. And that's kind of how I wanted the company to be. We work together as a team and we score a touchdown, which is getting into a top MBA program. So the website is definitely one way. But the challenge with the website, it's all Chinese. So if someone doesn't speak Chinese, they may have a tough time. So they can just send me an email direct. And it's my email is AJ Warner, like Warner Brothers, at touchdown.org.cn.
Okay, nice. Just something to add on that touchdown thing, the American football. American football is a game of inches, right? Am I right? It's a game of just little progress, game of yards, right? That 1 yard, that 1 yard, and then finally you hit that touchdown, and that just makes that success that much more exciting.
It's a hard game. I mean, you have two competing 11-person teams that are strong and are both trying to overcome each other, and so you have to keep going back and dealing with struggle, and then eventually, when you don't give up, like you said, you can finally break through, find that we call an opening, and then score that touchdown. And that's MBA programs. It's really tough. There are so many outstanding people from around the world that are applying to all these MBA programs. There are so many excellent students that are rejected by these MBA programs. So it's hard work to eventually get in. And it's that opening, and you get the interview, and then you do as well as you possibly can the interview, impress the interviewer. And so when they come back, they share that this is the student from China that they really, really want. And then within the admissions committee, that interviewer fights for you. We got to get this person. This person's going to be a total asset to our program. And it all comes down to that opening, that opportunity for the interview, and then taking full advantage and doing a great job.
I love your philosophy, man. That is pretty cool. That is awesome. So AJ, before we finish up our interview, can you give us like one last piece of advice? Tell our students like one either advice or motivational quote or saying that you have, and let's get these guys pumped up for another week of grueling GMAT prep.
Okay, let me think here for a second. Something motivational.
Yeah, it can be motivational or advice.
Well, we're talking about GMAT. Prepping for the GMAT. It's hard work. It sometimes can be really boring and tedious, but when you finally get to the MBA program, and it doesn't matter which MBA program it is, but when you're in the MBA program and with your fellow students, and you're going to just be so excited to have all these new friends that are going to be your friends for life, people that you can talk to when you have done great things at your company. You can talk to when you're having problems at your company. You can talk to them when you have a new idea and you want to start a new company. This is just a great group of people that you're going to have for the rest of your life that you would never have been able to connect with if you hadn't gone to an MBA. And for me, when I look back at my MBA program, it was the people that I socialized with. I was very social, and every day I'd go to classes, I'd say hi to people. And during breaks, I said hi to other people in the atrium at UT, at the University of Texas. Everyone was there studying. I'd go up and talk to different people, and I really miss that today because I just had such a fantastic time talking to people. And so when you're studying for your GMAT and you're feeling bored, think about all the friends and all the amazing experiences that you're going to have the next year at your MBA program. And hopefully that will motivate you to go back and study for another hour so that you can get the top GMAT score so you can get into your target MBA program.
Words of wisdom, guys. Words of wisdom. That was awesome, AJ. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, AJ, thank you so much for, giving us a chunk of your time to, really talk about some of these, some very diverse things, man. Today was pretty cool. We talked Beijing, pollution, karaoke, Eagles, American football, MBA programs, and what all of that. We put that into the melting pot, and we came out with a great interview. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
And thank you so much for inviting me. I mean, this is a lot of effort on your part, and I really appreciate you making time and giving me a chance to share a little bit about, the different experiences that I've had over these last 10 years here in China, working with some fantastic students.
Thank you, man. All right. That's it for today's episode, guys. This is Mateo Chang signing off. Catch you on the next episode of The MBA Wire.
Thanks for tuning into The MBA Wire. Would you like to know more? Visit us online at thembawire.com today and leave your questions and feedback. While you're there, sign up for an exclusive free audio series to help you strengthen your MBA interview. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The MBA Wire.